It wasn't an algorithm. You need to understand that first. The images and sounds you were shown, the cryptic numbers that appeared in your recommendations, that was a signal, a tuning fork resonating with something already inside of you. You were chosen because you are one of the few who senses that the reality we see is just a fraction of the whole story, a beautiful, hypnotic, but fragmented echo. For months, you've been collecting those echoes, feeling their power without understanding the source. Consider this video the first translation of that source. This is not another theory or a guess. This is the blueprint, the very architecture of the philosophy you've been subconsciously drawn to. What you are about to see is the key that elevates you from a mere spectator of the mystery to an active participant in its unfolding. The puzzle pieces are in your hands. Now, let's begin to assemble them.
Allow me to propose a thought experiment. Let us discuss fundamental matters while stepping back slightly from academic gravity. In the previous chapter, we investigated invisible structures, those elements of being that remain in perception's blind spot precisely because of their total embeddedness within the landscape. Our psyche, adhering to the principle of cognitive economy, simply disregards them, allowing them to merge with reality into a single perceptual monolith. However, upon concluding the last chapter, I sensed that for a comprehensive understanding, we lacked a supremely concrete example, an empirical example, one that everyone has inevitably encountered. And so, today, the subject of our analysis will be the supermarket. Yes, you heard correctly. And while at first glance this topic may appear to be a sort of playful coquetry, it deserves a close phenomenological examination, even if you are accustomed to maintaining a stoic seriousness. So, let us begin. One need not scale a pyramid or cross the threshold of a forgotten temple to enter a sacred space. Often, the simple act of pushing a shopping cart is enough to initiate the journey. Far from being a mere non-place, the supermarket exists as a meticulously structured ritual site, so deeply woven into the fabric of our routine that it has become opaque. Like any system defined by high exposure, it masks its complexity behind the veil of the obvious, remaining unthought of precisely because it is always there. And yet, with every visit, you are moving through a coherent, stable, and repetitive symbolic structure, an operational mandala designed to simultaneously concentrate and disperse the self. Look closer, and you will see that every surface of this environment is heavily coated. Every fluorescent line on the floor, every calculated path between the aisles, every strategic placement of a box is a syllable in a complex language. The architecture here is not merely functional, it is semiotic. There are invisible geometries at work, not just the planimetric lines of the floor plan, but cognitive grids that guide your behavior through a series of ambient signs. The refrigerated aisles are not positioned for mere convenience, but for the way cold arrests the flow of time, while the frozen section, with its muffled acoustics and narrow corridors, acts as a liminal zone, a threshold through which the shopper passes and repasses. The entrance to this temple is rarely direct, often forcing a detour. The exit, by contrast, is always singular. The entire space is meticulously designed as a ritual path with only one permitted direction: forward. Much like a Tibetan mandala, the center of this space is never granted immediately. Basic necessities are always placed at the far end, not by accident. Access to the primary function, nourishment, is mediated by an expository path dense with signs, packaging, slogans, visual commands. We do not simply buy, we are directed to buy by an environment that functions as a generator of behavior. You are not the sole agent choosing. The aisles are engineered to slow our stride. The carts possess a calibrated resistance, and the lights soften into a warmer glow exactly where we are meant to linger. Above you, the music is curated to lower the threshold of your decision-making, dissolving the sharp edges of critical thought. The entire space acts directly upon your nervous system long before you perform a single voluntary act. It is a self-regulating, semiotic environment. But there is a deeper layer. The supermarket, much like a traditional mandala, structures time just as effectively as it structures space. Each visit is a recurrence. It repeats at nearly regular intervals, like a weekly rite. The act of purchasing, which we flatter ourselves by calling rational, is, in truth, performative. You enter the sanctum, you cross through the designated zones, you make your economic offering, and you exit with goods. But the consumption is merely one phase of the ritual. It is not even the most important one. But what have we really done? We've followed a closed circuit, identical to itself. We've reaffirmed, once again, our role within a system. We've repeated a codified gesture that makes us feel agentive while changing nothing essential. The supermarket, like the mandala, does not exist to take us out of the world, but to reinsert us back into it, slightly more aligned. But aligned with what? With the system itself. The layout of the shelves, the organization of merchandise, the colors, materials, fonts, everything speaks the language of the world we inhabit. Each brand functions as a modern ideogram. Each special offer is a mantra. Each label acts as a semantic node in a digital web. The product on the shelf is not just food. It is the embodied form of a narrative. Organic, light, authentic, zero. Words that don't indicate substances, but identities. Buying is not about acquiring goods. It's about selecting traits of the self. It's about building a profile, updating a mask. In the absence of strong collective rituals, the rituality of consumption is the last remaining form of cultural synthesis. It's no surprise that the supermarket is one of modernity's most universal spaces. Within it, gestures are nearly identical everywhere. Different languages, different products, but the same choreography. Walk, choose, place in the cart, pay, exit. Every culture adapts to it, and the script doesn't change. And yet, precisely because of this, the structure can be disrupted. Like any closed system, the supermarket reveals its limits when observed without participating. Try walking through it without buying anything. Try moving against the flow. Try standing still in an aisle. You'll feel the field react. The environment does not tolerate deviation because normality must be performed for the system to survive. And at that precise point, something else might finally become visible. The hidden symmetries begin to emerge. The recursive sequences of the tiling, the almost liturgical arrangement of the forms. You realize that the geometry is not decorative, it is behavioral. It doesn't only organize space, but your position within it. You do not move through the supermarket. The supermarket moves through you. So, if the invisible is defined as what we always look at but no longer see, then the supermarket is one of its most stable manifestations. It remains invisible because it is too present, too integrated, too utterly absorbed into its own function. But this is precisely where the symbolic structure becomes clearest. Not in the strange or the exotic things, but in the obvious ones. It is a daily mandala, not drawn in colored sand by monks, but traced in the weary pathways of human need. And like every mandala, It doesn't need to be deciphered. It needs to be performed. And occasionally, crucially, it needs to be interrupted. Not to destroy it, but to finally see how it's made. See you in the next episode